Zen at the Sharp End. Welcome to the podcast about how to turn difficult people and relationships into your best teachers. I'm Mark Westmackett, a Zen Buddhist teacher, mindfulness teacher, and ex-professional astronomer. This is a podcast to go along with my book, Zen and the Art of Dealing with Difficult People. In each episode, we'll be exploring different varieties of people, relationships, and situations that we find irritating, difficult, or painful. Together with a number of Zen friends, I'll be discussing how the practices of Buddhism and mindfulness can help us see our difficult people as troublesome Buddhas, our greatest teachers. This podcast is sponsored by Zen Minded. If you get a chance, check them out at www.zenminded.uk. You'll find a curated selection of Japanese homeware and incense, a perfect match to your meditation practice. We're also sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp offers convenient and affordable therapy online. In my opinion, meditation and psychotherapy both offer valuable avenues for exploring our suffering, habits, and stuck areas. A while back I spent 3.5 years meeting twice a week with a psychotherapist when things had become acute, and it felt like the help he gave me was really transformational, especially when supported by my regular meditation practice. If you're interested, they've extended an offer of 10% off your first month of therapy at betterhelp.com/Zen at the Sharp End. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/Zen at the Sharp End. In this interview, I'm talking to Shelley Albrich, a high school art teacher based in Oregon, Eugene in the US, and a member of the Blue Cliff Zen group led by Shinkai Roshi, who I interviewed just a few episodes back. In the interview, we talk quite widely around different kinds of troublesome situations that have come up for her, and particularly around how her Buddhist practice influences her creativity, both in her personal work and in her teaching. And she describes how important it is to her to create a safe space in her art classes for the kids that come and work with her, many of which have a lot of difficulty and traumas and problems in their life, to kind of explore their emotions and express them creatively. And she finds that extremely important as a way of putting her practice into real life, with these kids. She also talks about a couple of different examples of when, the boat has been rocked and, she's had to deal with difficult feelings and thoughts and things that are arising from that, and how she's coped with them and how her practice has been extremely important. We talk about how sitting with difficult feelings is in fact a deep act of self-love, of compassion towards yourself. And also we talk a little bit around the idea of safety, and how dealing with difficult emotions, you need to feel safe, and actually how you can provide a safe environment for exploring those kind of things, both with yourself and in a group. So welcome, Shelley. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on to the podcast today. Maybe you could start off by just telling us a little bit about how you got into Buddhism, Zen, and where you're at with all that.
Okay, thank you. I started about 5 years ago. I was going through something really traumatic at my work. Something really challenging happened, and it kind of took the wind out of me. And I've been through some hard things in the past, but this one kind of really swept something through me. And at the time, I was taking yoga classes at the YMCA, and Shinkai was one of the yoga teachers there. And I noticed that I always felt better in his Zen yoga class. And I remember, I didn't know it was a Zen yoga class. I just knew it as a yoga class.
Right.
And so there was like a peacefulness that I would leave the class with. And I would go in and teach. And, after the trauma happened at our school, I could tell the kids could feel my sense of calm after my yoga class. And so I just knew I felt better. I didn't quite understand why.
So you're a teacher, is that right?
I'm a I teach art
Oh,
in a
yeah.
high school here in Eugene.
And you're in Eugene, in Oregon, and
Yes.
Shinkai. That's Shinkai that I interviewed a few episodes back. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
And so, he had invited this was 5 years ago again, in the spring. He had invited the whole class to go on a Zen retreat, the
Mm.
Breakthrough to Zen retreat, and I knew I had to say yes, and I knew nothing about it. So after class, I asked him, I said, "Do I need to know anything about Zen Buddhism?" And he said, "No, you can join." And I said, "Oh, great." So I don't know that I was seeking Zen Buddhism really. It
Mm,
was really about, the feeling I had of peaceful calm when I was just around Shinkai.
mm.
And, of course, the class put me into a body meditation. And, his training, I'm sure over the years, he just, naturally, it feels so natural when he
Yeah.
teaches the class, but I'm sure it's from years of training. So, yeah,
We practice and practice for years and years and years for it to feel completely effortless.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
So,
remember something very similar when I first met Daizan, our teacher here in London. I met him through a yoga class, and I absolutely resonate with exactly what you're saying. I remember going to his class, thinking it was just a normal yoga class, and something was different. Something felt really different, and I felt different afterwards. Mm,
yeah. Yeah, and then I knew that my energy was important because I'm in front of kids.
mm,
I work with high school kids, and I recognized that I felt off balance. And so when he invited us to go on the Zen retreat, I knew that I had to say yes.
mm.
And but it was different than I envisioned. The breakthrough to Zen retreat is quite intense.
Yep, yep.
And I told them later, I said, I don't know that I would have gone.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
But, I'm so thankful that I did because, I found that I could, look at some things that were really hard, and share those with somebody else in such a loving way. And I felt freer after that first experience. And then, I'll be honest, I've struggled with my meditation practice. I have good stretches, and then I go a little bit, but over the 5 years, I've been taking his meditation mindfulness class and, trying to keep up with that. And then, of course, I read your book or I listened to your book, I should
Mm.
say.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so, but yeah, I'm so thankful that we have Blue Cliff Zen Center here in Eugene. I know it's a treasure.
Mm, 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 mm,
So,
mm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that thank you for being honest and saying about your meditation practice, because I think that everyone goes through those kinds of periods, where we're on the road and we seem to be going along nice and steady, and then suddenly we're off the road, and we have stretches where we just the practice falls to the side, and it, almost in a way, like those kind of stretches where we're a little bit not quite on the road can show us how important it is to be on the road, and what we get from doing that regular practice. We suddenly realize, I'm not getting that. Hang on.
that's so true. Yeah, that's so true.
Mm,
Yeah, I noticed that I'm not quite as calm, or I'm finding myself more reactionary. And then the days that when I'm meditating, it's it feels like I'm more stable and more solid or grounded.
mm, mm, mm.
And especially working with kids, I when I'm by myself, I don't know that I notice it because I don't have anything to react to.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel more of a responsibility when I'm around people.
And so
Yeah.
with kids, I mean, they must be, you must meet a good few difficult, troublesome Buddhas in your job, right?
Oh, certainly, yes. You know, I feel honored though, they're high school kids and, sometimes, and they have challenges in their own life that's really, and I think because I'm an art teacher, they tend to trust, they'll share with me some things that sometimes it's not that they're being difficult with me, but their life is difficult, and
Oh,
sometimes I feel powerless to help,
mm,
or but I think really it's just about being present, and I think kids feel safe with me,
mm.
and that feels good.
Yeah, yeah, so important, isn't it? Especially if they perhaps come from an environment where there isn't that much safety.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
I think in my experience, doing the breakthrough to Zen retreat format, where you sit opposite a partner and you listen for 5 minutes, at a stretch with no reaction, is just such incredible practice that we
Mhm.
can apply in so many different parts of our life, just to be there with someone, just to learn what it is to be there and listen without trying to fix or trying to react or trying to uh, respond in any way. It's such a beautiful thing to offer, isn't it?
Yes, yes, and it's so loving, to have somebody listen. Like, I've felt that, of course, with different people, but it's rare to have someone really listen
Mm.
without thinking about what they're gonna say next, and listening just really to be of a presence to you. It's such a
Yeah,
beautiful
yeah,
love.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, you've got some kids maybe that have been troublesome here and there. I mean, what kind of other situations have you found the Zen practice and maybe some of this stuff about being present? How's that been of help with difficult people?
I think the experience I had at my I moved from a different high school, and, I I got involuntarily transferred, which felt like I was getting fired,
Oh gosh.
and I had been there for 15 years, and, it really hurt my ego self, and I felt quite small, and, I think and then I do think there might have been some folks that might have been behind that decision, and, of course, I don't know for sure, but I kind of feel like I know, and then it was
Mm,
hard to, like, recognize that what was happening wasn't about my inner character, like, the being that I am, I have a Buddha nature, I'm beautiful inside, whether somebody else recognizes that or not, and I had been there for 15 years, and the students loved me there, and,
mm,
so it kind of was, I don't know if that's like a Buddha troublesome Buddha, but it certainly shook my core.
mm, mm, mm.
And, I remember constantly having to remind myself that I'm of value,
Yeah.
and, that, now I'm in a place where it feels a lot more nurturing to me. My colleagues really respect me, and, I feel valued, and, I think I'm in for me, it's a healthier, place for me personally.
And
And,
how long ago was this?
2 years ago.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
it's my 2nd year at the new high school for
So
me, yeah.
that change has been within the time you've been practicing. So, I mean, what do you think has been like of all the things, different kinds of practices we do in Zen? What do you think has been the most helpful in kind of like seeing or finding a way through that?
I think what helped me, is I didn't react. Um, One of my colleagues said, "Shelley, you've gotta fight this. This isn't fair."
Uh,
And I recognized right away that I was being given a gift that I don't know that I would have left on my own. And I think
mm,
I was even though it was really challenging, I was calm through the process. I mean, of course, to my closest circle, I was crying, and
yeah,
I was
yeah.
kind of a big mess, but when I had to walk through I had to say goodbye to students and colleagues that I've known for so many years, and, I held my head high. I
Mm,
feel like I'm gonna start crying, but,
mm,
I had a beautiful send off by 2 colleagues that really was just tremendous. But just standing in that space, almost like breathing through when, in meditation, when something hard comes up, it kind of felt like I was just being in it, not
mm,
liking it, but
mm,
I almost felt like I was, I was recognizing that this isn't me. I don't know. It's hard to explain.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
So
maybe the sense of the ability to be inside your experience, fully experiencing it, knowing that it's not particularly comfortable, and not running away from it, or not sort of pushing it away, like just being in it.
yeah, and then I'm proud of the way I left. I didn't hurt. I didn't hurt. I could have said things that would have been
Mm,
not very kind.
mm.
And, so of course I had my close people that I could share with my feelings, but, so yeah, I think that was,
And do you think
really
that in the past you might have done something different? I mean, do you think that um
possibly.
mm,
Yeah, I think I might have, to me, there was parts of things that didn't feel fair. And, like my colleague wanted me to, fight it, you know,
mm,
um, I think it would have caused more suffering. And,
yeah,
uh,
okay.
and I'm thankful with the way I was able to let it go. But there was a part of me that knew it wasn't quite right. This, I wasn't being appreciated or valued.
Okay.
And, I don't know. I think one of my hardships in my life is standing up for, or being able to notice when something's not healthy and leaving it. I
Mm,
sometimes stay in something too long, and, um, I think had I not had this experience, I don't know that I would have left. I think I would have stayed in something that wasn't quite right,
right.
and yet I felt stronger. Like, in the past, I might have reacted, or I might have said things that wouldn't have been helpful.
Mm, mm. Yeah, so there's something there around recognizing your particular tendency to perhaps not quite assert the boundaries, or not quite recognize when it's time to change, or say something, and then also seeing what was happening as a gift rather than like something to fight. It's actually, this is an opportunity, which is a complete kind of different perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, I remember telling my colleague that I think I was given a golden ticket,
Right, right.
and he
Yeah.
couldn't believe it. He even told me later, he goes, "Shelley, I can't believe how you left so gracefully." He said, "I would
Oh,
have," you know,
yeah,
and he
yeah.
was he was actually in some ways more angry than I was, but, you know, I liked hearing it made me feel good that he was angry
Yeah.
because there was a part of me that, yeah. But, I think my ego sometimes, you know, yeah, yeah, sometimes I'm embarrassed by my humanity. Mm.
Yeah. And then the transition into the new school, like, how's that been?
It's really, when I go to staff meetings, people wanna hear what I have to contribute. Um, they they notice that I'm, engaging with students, and, I feel appreciated,
Mm,
and, I I've I always have gotten along with students. I think even before, I've always felt like I can connect with kids in an
mm,
honest, authentic way, and so that didn't change, but I think what changed is the level of respect I'm getting from my colleagues, and, I also think that I'm claiming more respect for myself.
mm, mm,
I'm starting to recognize that there's this fine line of finding my Buddha nature and then also being humble, like
absolutely.
not being too grand, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you could maybe see it as it's the middle way, right?
mm,
Is on one side there's this beautiful, we're the whole universe and everything, and on the other side there's this sense of, well, I'm a separate person. I've got my likes and wants and wishes and things like that. And one day we feel more on one side, the other day we feel, and it's about trying to weave the middle path, isn't it? Mm.
yeah.
Mm. And I was curious as to think, spending your whole life teaching and being around creativity and art and things, do you find your practice or Buddha nature or Zen in general coming into that creativity, how you teach it or how you practice it?
It's interesting. I think that before I found Zen, I found a way to meditate through art.
Yeah.
So art puts me in a present moment, and it helps me feel calm. And sometimes it even feels like something is coming through me that's absolutely beautiful, that's not me.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
I've always felt that connection, even when I was a child. And so I do think my artwork is changing over time. Um, I think what's changing is I think my presence around. I think I've always had an enthusiasm for art and being with the students, but I'm noticing that when I'm practicing meditation, there's a calmness that I'm not as worried about things going right, or
Mm.
when somebody spills paint, I'm not quite as, I mean, it's still a bother, of course, it's still frustrating, but it's not, I don't know how to explain it, but I think I've just become calmer.
Yeah. Yeah. And
But I think the
I guess
art,
sometimes these things happen like very slowly, isn't it? It's a very slow change towards being more calm, feeling of that equanimity about stuff that's happening, and we maybe don't notice so easily until we look back and you say, "Oh gosh, 10 years ago, I would have shouted loudly at that person."
exactly,
Mm,
yes.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just from a personal point of view, I mean, people say that some great artists, the art comes from them being in turmoil, and desperately wanting this, and that's not happening in their life, and in a kind of anguish, and then the art is kind of a way of channeling that emotion. But then, from a practice, from a Zen and Buddhist point of view, maybe we're coming into this place which is grounded and very still, and we're connected and we're embodied. And so, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I think yeah, I think when I was little, I had some hard things happen for me, and, my dad was an artist, and he would be painting and I would be creating. It was a refuge for me when I was quite small,
Mm.
and I think when some of my artwork, I would be embarrassed maybe to show people. It's very when I went through some hard things, it came out in my art, and I
Yeah,
think some
yeah.
people were surprised. They go, "Shelley, did you do that?"
Mm.
But, I think before I had meditation or before I had an outlet, some of those strong emotions came through my art,
Mm.
and so I'm
And
not
and
really
they have
sure if
this whole thing about art therapy, isn't it? That's
Yeah,
designed to do that. Mm.
and I think, I don't call it art therapy when I'm teaching, but I can see in the classroom when kids are creating, there's a calm and they're in their zone. They're just
Mm.
and I think for me, it's just creating that space for them to just really be in, and they can create. I really try not to censor too much, although this is a
Yeah.
high school, and, of course, some things come through that might look edgy or, but I think, yeah, um, yeah, I don't know if I answered your question quite right.
Mm. Mm. Well, there's that certainly seems, I mean, it's a lovely way to think about creating a class, isn't it? To make an atmosphere, an environment which feels like everything's welcome, a kind of um, a space in which anything's okay. They can allow their expression to come through onto their art, and as a way of helping them come into their bodies and be present with what's going on. It's a really lovely way of thinking of a classroom.
Yes, thank you. Yes,
Mm.
I do think that students feel comfortable, and, on Fridays, I make cocoa and, we play music and, yeah, I think it's a safe environment, for sure. And, sometimes I haven't been able to paint as much this year, but sometimes I'll paint with the kids.
Mm. Oh yeah,
So it's
yeah,
yeah, I feel lucky. And
yeah.
then they sometimes when I've come back from a retreat, one of my students said they sense my energy. They go,
Mm.
Shelley, what's wrong with you? And I was just really mellow. I was kind of blissing out, it's like you're still in love, right? And she goes, no, seriously, Shelley, what's wrong with you? And I go, what? And she goes, you're just different. And then I just thought it's kind of cool. Like I'm starting to notice. I mean, I'm glad that I kind of hope that I can be more like my teacher, like I know the way, I know the path is to keep meditating and doing these things. But yeah, I want to be an expression of love and
Mm,
compassion. And,
mm.
I think, yeah, I think that's what it's about. And finding that love in myself too, just letting everything be okay. Like even my things that I feel embarrassed by, like it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And what's embarrassment when you look at it, really? It's, there's a sort of something about an ego coming in there somewhere, isn't it? Yeah. So since we're sort of on the topic of difficult situations with people, um, when would you say that calmness and that equanimity and that stillness is most rocked, in your life? I mean, is it when someone spills the paint, or are there other situations?
I think sometimes I've had, I had a colleague that that made me, I think maybe she reminded me of my mom.
Mm,
Um, and, I've done a lot of work, around that issue. But when somebody pushes a button around kind of my value or my self worth, and, you know, I, I'm less about the spilt paint, but like if I don't know what that threatening is, like but it feels pretty intense when when I feel hurt in that way, where I'm
right,
feeling devalued, or
right.
when somebody's criticizing, it feels like they're criticizing something that's very core.
Mm,
And then I feel abandoned, or like I want to be loved, or I don't want to feel this rejection, and it feels really scary.
mm,
And so I think, yeah, I think if I'm feeling, if somebody says something that hurts my feelings on a deeper value level,
mm,
um, I don't always, you know, I've of course, I start crying, and then I start wondering if it's true. Maybe
mm.
on some level, I don't know if I'm of value.
Yeah.
And I know that's not true, but sometimes it feels like maybe they're right.
Absolutely. Like from a cognitive level, it's not true, but from a feeling side, your body's saying, "Well, this is what I feel." Mm, mm. And I think that would resonate with a lot of people, in general, and certainly people who are listening. And it's certainly something which I go into a little bit in the book, about dealing with stuff that's come up from your childhood and your upbringing and your parental situation and parents. So if you were to encounter yourself, let's say, when yourself was describing this kind of stuff, and given that what you've done and the practice, and how would you, what would you say? How do we work with this kind of feelings?
If Yeah, I think I would tell her it's okay to feel hurt, and, it's okay to feel it and just be with that feeling for a bit. And then just I would hug her and
Mm,
just
mm,
really be
mm,
compassionate, and just I think sometimes I don't wanna be with that feeling, so
mm.
I maybe will overeat or watch something on Netflix to try to, like, avoid that feeling. But I think what's coming up for me right now is just how can I be with that feeling and love that little girl, just, like, hug her like my own child
Yeah.
and let her know it's okay.
Mm, mm, mm. Yeah. I mean, that's such a beautiful way of putting it. Personally, I feel sometimes like a meditation is like giving yourself a hug. Like you metaphorically put an arm around yourself, isn't it? And you just sit there with this chaos and bubbling mess of feelings and memories, and sensations in the body. And it's just like, it's as much as you can do to just simply be there, stay with it, isn't it? And as you say, like people do all sorts of things to try to distract themselves or get somewhere else, and it takes a lot of love. It takes that intention to love yourself, to actually sit with it.
Yeah, I've had some very moving meditations where I came into the meditation just raw with what was going on and something in my life, and then just washed over with grace or love, like profound.
Mm.
And I remember one time just really sobbing in the Zen in our Zen meditation
Yeah.
center, and I tears were just streaming down my face. But it was really a good feeling, like
Mm.
just feeling completely embraced by love. You
Mm.
know, when I'm sometimes at my lowest low and feeling very raw, sometimes I'm washed with an
Mm.
immense amount of love. So it's
Where does
pretty
it come
amazing.
from?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It goes against what people think. I think the general person would think of what is a Zen meditation. Like I wouldn't think that many people would imagine someone sitting in a Zen center doing meditation with streams of tears coming down their eyes and feeling this overwhelming sense of love. I mean, it's the most beautiful image. And also I resonates because I've been there also, sitting in our dojo here in exactly the same situation. And, you know, people have this idea that Zen's all about being really calm and very, very sort of quote, quote, Zen, but it's not at all. It's about that real raw, as you say, rawness of emotion and allowing it to all come and go, as it comes, as it goes. Mm.
I also think it's the container of the space.
Ah,
Of
yeah.
course,
Mm.
the people that I'm meditating with, I just feel love just
Mm.
from their presence.
Mm.
And I think when these things come up, these doubts or these sadnesses that come up, knowing that I'm in the space of love,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
almost like they're it's not like they're witnessing it, but because they don't know, they're not in my my thoughts, but that just the thought that I'm with them
yeah,
loves me to wholeness.
yeah, yeah. There's a sense of being held in the space, isn't it?
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
mm,
And I think that's why some of the emotions come up for me. I feel safe. I
mm,
feel safe, and I know that I'm not being judged.
mm, mm. Yeah, it's interesting that word's come up a couple of times. Safe. I think that there's something there around dealing with difficulty and maybe people pressing your buttons and feeling that irritation or anxiety, worry, whatever like that, and being able to process that when you're not feeling that safe is very, very hard. I think
Mm.
finding a space or a situation where we feel like the body when it's safe, the body calms, doesn't it? There's a settling and a grounding when we feel safe. And I think that's maybe like a little bit overlooked sometimes how important that is.
Yeah, yeah.
And as you say, like in the classroom, also providing a space um, where people can get through some stuff, in their artwork, and knowing that they're not going to be. Yeah, it's about not being judged or not being like criticized as they're doing it, isn't it? That can real uh, break that safety.
Yeah, I think too that art, when we're creating art, there's all different abilities in my classroom.
Mm,
And at this stage of the game, I'm not interested in, a lot of students come in without ever having taken a drawing class, or I'm really more interested in engaging them where they're at,
yeah,
and hopefully they feel I don't, I'm less concerned about the end product.
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
wanna damage their spirit is
yeah,
what I've
yeah.
found, and,
We
I
we
think a
do.
lot of my yeah,
Sorry. No, go on. Yeah. Mm.
just a lot of my students have had damage in their life, and I certainly don't wanna add to it.
Right. Exactly.
And I think
Exactly.
art can be a very vulnerable process because you can
Mm,
see, people, and, it's people can see what you're creating, and so it's hard to hide
yeah.
from your abilities.
Here in London, we have a lady who facilitates a Zen brushwork. Um, workshop. She does it sort of every month or so. And so she's a Japanese lady and very accomplished calligrapher, but she teaches it in such a way where it's like we do some body work practice, and then we do some work for getting into the hara, into the belly, and then we do some work with the brush, which is about like expressing from your hara, from your body, and not worrying about what it looks like. And I think it, for me, I've done it a few times. I don't have enough time to do it regularly, which I'd like to, but to be able to let go of what it looks like and just kind of connect with how it feels to put the brush on the page is quite a hurdle to get over. There's quite a lot of conditioning there around, it's supposed to look like this, and if it doesn't look like this, then we haven't done it right. So kind of like working from the body and allowing that to come through is quite a difficult thing to create the space for.
Yeah, that sounds like I wish I could take that workshop. I think that would be so wonderful. I saw, a video of Shinkai Roshi, Daizan and Shinkai's teacher, doing a, with a mop. He was doing this.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, I just
doing
thought
that really big calligraphy, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and then his whole body was in it. And, he was with it. Like, he was with that,
Yeah.
And, yeah, I think that it's true, sometimes in art, I'm kind of with it more than other times. Like, yeah, I think that's getting into the middle of it, like just being in it instead of,
Like Daizan sometimes uses the analogy, like you can't be swimming and sitting at the side of the pool watching. Like you can either be one or the other. And Zen is encouraging us to basically dive in. And I think, like, on a dance point of view, you could say, well, you can't dance and have a little camera looking back at yourself. Like if you're doing a performance piece, it's all about what people perceive you doing. Whereas Zen is asking us to be in it 100% and not have a thought about what other people see about it, what other people are looking from the outside. And you could maybe say the same for art, like Zen is asking us to maybe just really be in it 100% without thinking what other people are going to think of it.
Yeah. And then, of course, high school students are very self-conscious. So,
and putting it on Instagram straight away.
I have some tricks, to try to get them not to be too precious about it. But it's, I think those workshops would help me as a teacher. I would love to take that class. But anyway, I agree wholeheartedly.
Nice. Oh, it's a good place to finish, I think. Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a really, really great chat about, all those different things about your art practice and teaching.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. I feel honored to be here. Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review and a star rating on whatever platform you use. And do recommend it to others, because we all meet difficult people, and each of those meetings presents an opportunity for learning and growth. I also have a downloadable video course in how to deal with difficult people. Head over to my website for more information, markwestmaquette.co.uk. Thanks for listening.